in Hertfordshire.
Good morning and a very warm welcome to St Paul's for our morning worship, our civic service today. A warm welcome to those who are joining us online live or who will watch this subsequently. It's great to gather together this morning. A particular welcome to the Deputy Lord Lieutenant of Essex. Jackie, good to have you back with us, and the first time here that you are representing the King. So it's lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Chair of Council, Andrew Johnson, and our thanks to you for planning this service and all the work that you have put in. Welcome to Russell, leader of the Council, and to Chris, leader of the Labour Group. Great to have you here. And to the representatives of the Chair's Charities of the Year, Harlow Rock School and Streets to Homes. Kerry, you're around somewhere, so it's great to have you with us this morning. Welcome to the Mayors and Chairs of Essex and Hertfordshire this morning. And I do want to give two special congratulations and welcome. First of all, lovely to have the St Nicholas School Choir with us, together with mums and supporting dads and so forth. So let's give you a warm welcome, turning out on a Sunday. We very much look forward to your contribution later on. And we want to express our congratulations to the new Chief Executive on his appointment of the Council, Andrew Bramage. So where are you, Andrew? Well, so lovely to have you with us. You've been in Harlow for many, many years, I know, but great. Congratulations. And welcome to those of all different faith traditions, including Rabbi Eric, who I'm delighted will be bringing us a reading. I was looking for you in the service, so it's lovely to have you with us. So Andrew is going to say a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for that lovely welcome to everyone, and lovely to see such a full church this morning, particularly after the last couple of years where we haven't been able to gather together so effectively. A special thanks from me, I'll thank people later, but a special thanks and welcome this morning again to St Nicholas School Choir. Some of you may be wondering why St Nicholas are here. I'm the Vice Chair of the Governors at that school, and so particularly pleasurable for me to have them representing us here. I was asked yesterday a question by a councillor: why do we have a civic service? And first of all I started to say, oh, it's tradition, and every council does it. And then I thought, and thought a little bit more, and we have a civic service every year to gather people together, to gather our community together, to celebrate our community, to pray for our community, and to pray for the work and the dedication of the council, of its councillors and its staff. And I'd like you to all bear that in mind today as we take you through this service. So welcome once again, and I'll take my leave for the moment.
You will find all that you need on the order of service that everyone should have. We stand to sing "Praise My Soul, the King of Heaven." Thanks now to Councillor Russell Perrin, leader of Harlow Council.
Good morning. Now as an elder myself and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as one who shares in the glory to be revealed, I exhort the elders amongst you tend the flock of God that is your charge, exercising the oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you do it, for not sordid gain, but eagerly. Do not lord it over those in your charge, but be examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will win the crown of glory that never fades away. In the same way, you who are younger must accept the authority of the elders. And all of you must clothe yourselves with humility in your dealings with one another. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
Thanks to our MP now, Robert Halfron, who will read from Isaiah 55.
Good morning. The compassion of the Lord. Come, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and that you have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labour for which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me, so that you may live. I will make you with you an everlasting covenant, my steadfast sure love for David. See, I made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and a commander for the peoples. See, you shall call nations that you do not know, and nations that do not know you shall run to you, because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has glorified you. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their way, and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them return to the Lord, that he may have mercy on them, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return there until they have watered the earth, making it forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes out from my mouth. It shall not return me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I purpose, and succeed in the thing for which I sent it.
You are today subject to, in a normal service you'd be subject to one address. Today you're so fortunate and you have two, one for myself and one for Martin. I'll leave you to judge later. In life I have been a leader in work, charitable sector, youth groups, school groups, church groups, politics, with friends and family. And now as chair of Harlow Council, I find myself not just the first citizen of my hometown, but as our constitution directs, and as I've joked previously, the conscience of the council. Daunting task indeed. And so with that in mind, and thinking about today, and focusing on that initial Bible reading that Martin and I chose to open the service, that reading from Peter that the leader of the council kindly gave us just a moment ago, we decided to focus on leadership as the theme of this civic service. A service like today is an opportunity to ask for God's help for us as a corporate world, but it's also a challenge to us on an individual basis. Is there anything that we need to repent of? That's a challenge that crosses all political boundaries, cultural, religious heritages. And sitting here today, no matter what council, charity, religious group, organisation or family you lead, we're all God's servants. We all need to exercise our authority, our leadership, as Peter tells us in that reading, in humility. And so I got my pad and pen out and started to make notes on what to say. And the first thing I wrote down was, what is leadership? Now, the Oxford English Dictionary defines it as the action of leading a group of people or an organisation. Well, that's pretty obvious and dry. So I looked at some of the books on my bookshelf, and famed American business consultant Peter Drucker, who's written most of the books on management in the last 50 years, was equally unhelpful. He said, the definition of a leader is someone who has followers. So I went back to that Bible reading from Peter that we'd chosen. I read it again a couple of times, and I got my pad out again and thought, what is a servant leader? And in one of those management books, I found this definition. Servant leadership seeks to move management and personal interaction away from controlling and towards a more synergistic relationship. The authority figure in servant leadership attempts to promote innovation, empower employees, and assure the well-being of those around them. Servant leaders aim to develop leadership qualities in others. This leadership style requires an individual to demonstrate characteristics such as empathy, listening, stewardship, and commitment to the personal growth of others. Now that's very management speak. And if you've read any management guides, they'll tell you that Robert Greenleaf first popularised servant leaders in writings in the 70s. But honestly, people, the principle of servant leadership dates well before that. In the last century alone, I can think off the top of my head and point to Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, and of course, particularly one's mind this year goes to the late Queen Elizabeth. In fact, dare I, in the presence of the Deputy Lieutenant, be bold enough to posit that it's Queen Elizabeth the Great, specifically for her servant leadership. And of course, thinking biblically, we can go far back to the Old Testament leaders, Moses, Joshua, David, servant leaders who strengthened the weak and empowered those entrusted to their care, and who showed compassion towards the disadvantaged. As someone brought up a Christian, I would say the New Testament, Jesus' ministry, is the supreme example of servant leadership. But I suspect Martin may well want to explore that particular line of thought in a moment. And so I was left thinking, for the second religious service this weekend, the first being the interfaith service yesterday at the synagogue, and I find myself falling back on my Roman Catholic upbringing to a man who, as I was growing up, was one of my, for want of a better word, heroes. The three Ps, along with a Prime Minister and a President. Yes, I was a bit of a sad, geeky boy. A President, a Prime Minister, and the third P was a Pope. I remember reading an article about Andreas Widmer. Now, Andreas is an associate professor at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. But on Christmas Eve in 1986, he was a very new, very nervous Swiss guardsman assigned to protect that Pope. And when John Paul II emerged from the papal apartments on his way to celebrate midnight mass, he saw Andreas standing at his post. Andreas was young, homesick, and in all honesty a bit depressed about spending his first Christmas away from his family and friends, although he hadn't admitted as much to anyone. John Paul approached Andreas and said, "You look sad, my son. Of course, this is your first Christmas away from home. I appreciate the sacrifice you're making for the church. I will pray for you as I celebrate Mass tonight." Andreas reflected afterwards on that exchange, and he recalled that none of the other guards, his boss, his colleagues, had noticed his anguish. Only the person elected to lead 1 billion people, the servant leader, had paid him any attention. And Widmer reflected later in life that the legacy of servant leadership that Pope John Paul II left is one that every leader who, regardless of faith, hopes to inspire in his or her team to achieve excellence. He boiled it down to three key things. 1, encourage people to dream big and keep their eyes on the long term. Andreas said that the Pope always took the perspective of his whole life into consideration when talking with him, and thinks this was rooted in his experience as a university chaplain. Andreas said, once the Pope stopped to talk to me, he wanted to know how I was doing and how I liked being a Swiss Guardsman. I told him my concerns and worries, which were all focused very much on the short term. He helped me to turn these short-term issues into long-term visions for the rest of my life. According to Andreas, the Pontiff always pushed him to reach loftier goals and never to settle for mediocrity. He encouraged me, he said, to think big. 2, to be very fully present in every conversation. Andreas said, every time I talked with John Paul, even if it was just passing by to say hello, he made me feel like I was the only reason he got up that morning. On that very first encounter on Christmas Eve, he was miserable and pretty much ready to quit. He thought he'd made a huge mistake in signing up to be a Swiss Guardsman. When the Pope walked out of the apartment, he could have simply walked by Andreas. But he didn't. He stopped and noticed that the boy was distraught and even identified the reason for it. He was never too wrapped up in his head and had the keen ability to notice things in the moment, the true feeling of people that he encountered. And 3, show people that you believe in them. John Paul II had more faith in me than I had in myself, said Andreas. This built up my self-esteem and allowed me to achieve more than I would ever thought possible. He believed in me first, even before I believed in myself. Servant leaders believe in people, often much more strongly than those people themselves, and showing that often inspires people to flourish. And so my hope and prayer today is that all of us may recognise something from this service, that we leave here appreciating slightly better our multifaceted roles as servant leaders. As councillors, chairs and mayors, teachers, religious leaders, charity leaders, dare I even say the King's representative, none of us are the finished product. And I pray, leaving here, all of us grasp the opportunity to be inspirational, to use our skills that I believe are God-given, and make a difference in our community as servant leaders.
Our thanks now to the St Nicholas School Choir, who will sing The Colours of My Life.
The colours of my life are bountiful and bountiful. The purple glow of indigo, the gleam of green and gold, the splendour of the sunrise, the dazzle of the flame, the glory of the rainbow, I'm pleasurable to share. No quiet browns and grays, I'll take my days instead, and fill them till they overflow with rose and cherry red. And should this sunlit world grow dark one day, the colours of my life will leave a shining light to show the way. The colours of my life
Now, for those who are members of St Paul's Youth and Kids, Spike, our Sunday school here, and now is a moment for you to go to your own groups, and as you do so, my thanks and our thanks to Rabbi Irit as you speak to us on teaching. Thank you.
After the death of King Solomon, they appointed his son, King Rehoboam, as king. And we read in the first book of Kings, "Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. 'How would you advise me to answer these people?' he asked. They replied, 'If today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants.' And the Midrash teaches us that he who is appointed leader over the community becomes the servant of the community." And a Hasidic source adds, "If God has granted you the privilege of being leader of a community, should you need to rebuke your community, do not rebuke them with an angry heart, but with a soft tongue. For every community is a holy congregation, blessed of God. Let every person be important in your eyes and not inconsequential, for you cannot know who is worthy and who is unworthy. People often look upon fellow people as despicable and worthless, but God looks into the very heart." And a final source adds, "You must always have two pockets. In one, keep a slip of paper on which is written, 'For my sake was the world created.' In the other, keep a slip of paper on which is written, 'I am but dust and ashes.'"
Now our thanks to Chris Vince, leader of the opposition to Labour. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I have to say it's an honour to be reading Nelson Mandela today. The Bible tells us that gardeners preceded gardeners, but that was not the case at Polesmore, where I cultivated a garden that became one of my happiest diversions. It was my way of escaping from the monolithic concrete world that surrounded us. Within a few weeks of surveying all the empty space we had on the building's roof and how it was bathed the whole day, I decided to start a garden and received permission to do so from the commanding officer. Each morning, I put on a straw hat and rough gloves and worked in the garden for 2 hours. Every Sunday, I would supply vegetables to the kitchen so that they could cook a special meal for the common law prisoners. I also gave quite a lot of my harvest to the warders who used to bring satchels and take away their fresh vegetables. A garden was one of the few things in prison that one could control. To plant a seed, to watch it grow, to tend it and then harvest it, offered a simple but enduring satisfaction. The sense of being the custodian of this small patch of earth offered a taste of freedom. In some ways, I saw the garden as a metaphor for certain aspects of my life. A leader must also tend his garden. He too plants seeds and then watches, cultivates and harvests the result. Like the gardener, a leader must take responsibility for what he cultivates. He must mind his work, try to repel enemies, preserve what can be preserved and eliminate what cannot succeed.
They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. Alice is marrying one of the guard. A soldier's life is terrible hard, said Alice. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. We looked for the king, but he never came. Well, God take care of him all the same, said Alice. They're changing guard at Buckingham Palace. Christopher Robin went down with Alice. A face looked up, but it wasn't the king's. "He's much too busy assigning things," said Alice. 2 weeks ago, our family, including our 2 grandchildren, went to see Dippy the dinosaur at the Natural History Museum. We had a good time, and at the end of the day, a little tired, looking forward to being home, came out the side entrance. There was a gaggle on the road. "Who are they watching?" "It's the king," said one of us. And coming out of the V&A opposite with Camilla, we saw the excited crowd and joined in. And there was a car waiting for Charles and Camilla to get into. My apologies, Your Majesty. Please pass on my apologies. You can tell my generation, can't you? I didn't script that, but I wish I had. Coming out of the V&A opposite with Camilla was Charles. Waiting there was the car. And then suddenly a surprise. Both crossed the road towards us and greeted the crowd in front of us. In the ancient world, the nation's leader, king or whoever, was called a shepherd. But what did this mean? We've had a reading from Isaiah, this place where it was wrestled, this question was wrestled with by the Israelites, by the Jews who found themselves as captives in Persia. And as they longed for a better future, what sort of king did they want? And they looked at their own history. Their first king, Saul, their wisest king, Solomon, and then there was their present ruler, the enlightened Emperor Cyrus of Persia. Should a shepherd king be like their first king, Saul, hopelessly insecure, who sought his own inner peace and security to the cost of the kingdom as he trampled on the talent and advice of others such as David? Should a shepherd king be like the ruler of the empire where they found themselves, Cyrus, who invaded adjoining nations and who sought to impose global peace and security by, albeit a somewhat enlightened, colonialism? Or should a shepherd king be like Solomon, whose wisdom left a legacy of wealth and bureaucracy, and left people asking, why? What is the point of life? What is the point of wealth when all this wonderful organisation, but why? And overflows in books in the Bible such as Ecclesiastes with its vanity, vanity, everything is vanity. They'd had enough of wealth. Or was a shepherd like King David, who wrote the psalm, "The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me down to lie in pastures green. He leadeth me the quiet waters by." And in the Isaiah passage, it is David who is settled on. "For, behold, I have made him a witness to the peoples, a leader and commander for the peoples." For the good shepherd king, the good leader, does not lead out of insecurity like Saul, or by seeking to impose their own ideas on others like Cyrus, or by tick-box exercises in bureaucracy like Solomon. And even if some of this is inevitable, or perhaps desirable even in a complex world, at heart they wanted a shepherd who embodied something different. Someone who will help them, to pick up a word that Andrew used, flourish. "My soul he doth restore again, and me to walk doth make within the paths of righteousness, in for his own name's sake. Someone who will lead us to the infinite resources we have in our rich and diverse planet Earth, where God has provided all we need for flourishing. The Good Shepherd, who knows that they cannot themselves provide what is needed, but can themselves help people find pastures where they will flourish, the pastures of God's provision. Mandela has been a superb modern example, who gained that permission, as we heard from the reading by Chris, to cultivate a garden in prison that became one of his happiest diversions. And there he was nourished, as it were, by God's pastures, and wrote to requote, to plant a seed, watch it grow, to tend it, and then harvest it, offered a simple but enduring satisfaction. The sense of being the custodian of this small patch of earth offered a taste of freedom. A metaphor for a leader. For a leader must also tend his garden. He too plants seeds and then watches, cultivates and harvests the results. Like a gardener, a leader must take responsibility for what he cultivates. He must mind his work, try to repel enemies, preserve what can be preserved, and eliminate what cannot succeed. Restoring and keeping safe, as the Psalm 23 reminds us. And in his garden, Mandela tapped into what David, the shepherd king, knew and what Israel reflected on. How rich we are. Each one of us here, the poorest person here, is richer than the vast majority of the people who have ever lived anywhere. And that is probably true of the poorest person in our land. We are rich, and we are infinitely more rich than we realize, because God has provided such a rich world. And richness we begin to see when things are done well. So for that occasion, 2 or 3 weeks ago, when Food Bank was presented with 6,000 loads of bread and were desperate to get rid of them, and there was a pile of them outside the front of the church. Come and buy. Free. Come and take. And what a lovely metaphor for how God works and provides, providing milk and honey, providing manna, providing whatever we need as we are servants serving God. The Good Shepherd King, leading their people to places where by God's grace they will thrive. And the leader is the one who enables and allows imaginations to expand. You mentioned about having that vision, the longer vision. Enabling our imaginations to expand, that God has made a rainbow covenant with the world. This incredibly rich and diverse world, with all its fertility and rich diversity. And we find God provides all we need for security, health, and true wealth. Home. Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And he who has no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk, without money and without price. Not a magic money tree, but an invitation to trust that God has provided and does provide, as we are imaginative and creative and trusting. To be full of hope, even amongst destruction, as was Isaiah in those writing those words. As have been some of the people that we know from our own history. Leaders full of hope and creativity. I think of Rab Butler, who laid the foundation stone of this church and who spearheaded the Transforming Education Act of 1944 through Parliament in the midst of war, looking to the future. We are looking for people such as the Fresh Dane, John Maynard Keynes, whose thinking during the Second World War helped rebuild the post-war of the late 40s and onwards, knowing how to invest limited resources creatively, not bound by spreadsheet analyses of the world. We are looking for people like the modern Clement Attlee, who was such a team player, risking his own career to value and walk humbly and closely with a political opponent, Winston Churchill, in whom he recognised the leadership needed for wartime Britain. Attlee was a key player in Churchill's appointment as Prime Minister and stuck by him when his leadership was challenged in 1940 and 1942. Churchill was not always so popular. And we are looking for people like the modern-day Archbishop William Temple, who coined the phrase welfare state in the 1940s as a response to what he called the warfare states of Nazi Germany and others, including those behind what many of us have called the Iron Curtain at that time. We are looking for those creative leaders, those who work servantly alongside other people, people of hope, the Rab Butlers, the Keynes, the Attlees, the William Temples. And all of us here are shepherds, leaders in some sphere of life, whether you are a grandparent with children, whether you are a parent, whether you are a line manager, whether you are serving the local community group, whether in the life of the council, streets to homes, rock school, or whatever it is. And those whom you care for are a garden. So like Mandela, water them, tender them, gently watch over them, and care for them as a good shepherd. And you will see the glory of seeing them blossom, and flourish. And you will be amazed at what God will do for you and in you. For God is King, and he will surprise you. And when human creativity and imagination is not enough, remember the Dunkirks, the D-Day landings, the miracles of these days, the modern-day deliverances through the Red Sea. God will come across and meet you too. And remember the resurrection mosaic behind me of the risen Christ meeting his two grieving friends at Emmaus, as told in the final chapter of Luke's Gospel, which reminds us that greatest human flourishing comes in God for an eternal life. When we went to London, we were astonished and wonderfully surprised to see the King. Christopher Robin and Alice no doubt hoped to see the King. But as each one of us serve, we will be astonished and wonderfully surprised at what God, who is King of all, will do for you and through me, as we trust and look to God. The God who does show up, the God who Jesus taught us meets with us in every other person we meet. For each one of us, each one of you, is the image of God. The God who does show up. And the God, the King, who will one day in the resurrection meet you and me face to face. The servant King, the servant leader depicted behind me. To close with a few words again of our opening reading. Shepherd the flock among you, exercising oversight not by compulsion but willingly, in accordance with God, and not greedily but eagerly, and not lording it over those under your care, but being examples for the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Amen. Our next hymn is our offering hymn, called the Servant King. You will find in the orders of service little envelopes, such as this, and Please be generous and use these, and the collection will go to streets, to homes, and Harlow Rock School. And Kerry will be at the back to check that you've been generous, won't you, Kerry? So be generous. And for those who wish to give in the normal way and so forth to the life of St. Paul's here, the open plate passed amongst us will be used for that, and we have our normal envelopes which you can use, separate ones, and there is also a card reader at the back of church that Caroline will be to point you towards. So please be generous for the Mayor's Charity Streets at Harlow Rock School. We sing The Servant King. For all who serve in our community, thanks be to God. For Streets to Homes and Harlow Rock School, thanks be to God. For those who have given so generously and of their lives in the past 2 years, serving others, thanks be to God. For those who continue on the front line in our communities, thanks be to God. For all who lead amongst us in nation and in community, thanks be to God. For these gifts, thanks be to God, for yours, Lord, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the splendour, the majesty. For everything in heaven and on earth is yours. All things come from you, and of your own do we give you. Amen. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. I'd just like to thank everyone that has been involved in making this service so lovely this morning. Particular thanks go to St Nicholas School Choir for coming and singing to us so lovely. Well done. Thank you to their parents for allowing them to come out on a Sunday morning and for joining us here. To all the people who have read for me, thank you. And Emma, I can't even see you. She's sat at the back. Emma is effectively the chair's PA and has put a lot of work into bringing together the order of service, corralling Martin and I into our thinking, and constant phone calls between me and her asking about various facets of today. So Emma, thank you for all the work you've put in behind the scenes and the other officers that have helped you. Martin, thank you for the lovely words today. Thank you for hosting us in your lovely church. The amazing mosaic that we always talk of. And thank you for being there at the end of the phone over the last few weeks as I furiously messaged you about various aspects of this service. I'd like to welcome all of you here today back to the Civic Centre afterwards. There are some light refreshments. That includes the children, the parents, and the regular congregation of St Paul's. Please feel free to come and share a cup of tea with us and some light refreshments. And thank you once again all for coming today.
Thank you. And just to add to that welcome there, can I say thank you to all those who contributed in our life as a church. The tea last Saturday afternoon, which raised 231 for Sarah Chingwaba's education in Tanzania. So thank you for that £231 raised towards the well over £1,000 that has so far been raised this year. You will find in the pews in front of you a little leaflet, Let There Be Light. Please do be taking one of these away with you and reflecting on it. We give thanks to God for this wonderful building that has been, as it were, bequeathed to us over the years, opened in 1959 with a foundation stone laid by Rav Butler. It is sorely in need of refurbishment. The wiring came in 1958, I guess, certainly not later than 59, and urgently needs upgrading. Our lighting has all but gone. We have lost the main chandeliers in the centre, and we also wish to improve our AV and sound and vision and other things as well. We launched a few weeks ago, and we as a local community here are seeking to raise £60,000. And we, in the 2 or 3 weeks since we launched, we are well over £32,000 towards that with others as well. So we want to get to that £60,000. So be generous. We have also written and are writing to all sorts of national and local charities as well. And their responses are coming in gradually. And we hope to be in a position to know exactly how much of this, hopefully it all by the end of March. And my aim and hope is that by this time next year, we will have completed. If all went swimmingly well, I think we could do that. So let's be praying for it, be supporting, and we are asking, what we most of all are asking is that everyone be involved. It might be financially, but it might be just by saying, oh, so-and-so might be able to help. Or it might be by yourself sort of doing some sort of money-raising thing, or it might just be by praying. We want everyone, when it is completed, to be able to say, yes, I was part of that. So do be taking these away, and if you run out there, there's plenty at the back as well. We stand to sing the national
Victorious, hallelujah.
and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. We sing, Guide me, O thou great Redeemer.